Welcome to the JUSTPADRIDE Snowboard channel. I'm Lars Horstman with the last snowboard maintenance tip of the season. And of course, that's got to be storage. What do you do with your board over summer? Which kind of tuning steps should you be taking before you tuck the board away? Why would we bother doing anything at all to our snowboard before we tuck it away for summer? Some people have been telling me they've never done a thing and they've never had an issue with their board. The explanation for that is, in my opinion, the way you store a board and also what kind of board, what kind of base material are we talking about here. If you have an extruded base that doesn't absorb much wax in the first place, of course it can't lose much wax either. If you have a very high-end sintered base that can absorb a lot of wax, of course that can also dry out and lose wax. And I've seen it happen, and it happens fairly fast, in particular when you store a board at something more than room temperature. So any kind of warmer environment dries out a high-end base quite severely and quickly. That brings me to the point of where to store a board, how to store a board. Whatever you do to your board, whether you apply storage wax and do your edges nicely or not, you should be storing your board somewhere where it's in an environment that has room temperature and is pretty clean. Ideally, tuck it into a board sleeve or like a case or a board bag or whatever, that's perfect. But if you don't have that, simply make sure the board is somewhere where it's not exposed to crazy humidity, like a crawl space or something, or like an attic that is simply super hot. Keep the board somewhere in a very neutral room temperature kind of environment with normal humidity levels as well. So that's where and how to store the board. Ideally wrap it in something. That's always a good idea. Now the storage wax discussion. If you decide, regardless of the base material you're looking at, to actually apply storage wax. Storage wax is not a particular specialist wax. And some people simply use warm temp wax, that's fine. The reason for that, why that is actually not a dumb thing to do, is it's a softer wax, it penetrates your base deeper, and because it's softer, it also doesn't get quite so brittle or hard over summer and is easier to remove. Now, the issue with that is, when you then remove the warm temperature wax, and let's say your season kicks off with minus 15 degrees air temperature, that is potentially the wrong wax to get you gliding on day one, and you will, after removing that wax, have to reapply the appropriate wax temperature or snow temperature, however. I'm saving myself this step by using universal wax, like an all temp kind of wax for my storage wax application. And when I then scrape that off, the board is basically instantly ready to go. Now, ready to go means the edges have been done. And if your board needs an edge tune, and mostly a board needs something after a season, you want to do that before you apply the storage wax. The reason for that is quite simple. If you scrape the base, you are being left with a perfectly ready, freshly waxed base that is also a little bit greasy. Now, there's multiple things that happen. One thing is you're running your side bevel guide, your side edge guide. Of course, you're setting that onto the base and you're running it along the base. You'll be left with a very greasy glide plate that doesn't actually glide very well at all, and that's kind of like messy, and you know, things just don't work quite smoothly. So it's kind of silly to do that after scraping a board. Well, you don't want to do it before scraping the board either, because that leaves you with a surface that isn't necessarily perfectly even, so you kind of get a wobbly, wonky edge tune. So that wax has to be off the board. It has to be removed in order for you to actually do your edges. So you'll be contaminating your tool, which is not a huge deal. The big deal here is you'll be contaminating your base with file shavings, with metal shavings from your side edge. because that greasy base will attract those fine pieces much more so than a base that is pretty much dry, like this puppy here that has been ridden hard. And what happens then is, you know, you give it a few passes, you got some shavings onto your base, and then on the next pass, you're working them into the base deeper and deeper. And getting them out of that base is an absolute headache, and you don't even want to go there. So keep your order of operations straightforward. You always do your edges before you apply any kind of wax. And that means the time to do your edges is now, before you apply the storage wax. Quick interruption. If I have helped you out with all my content so much that you feel like you want to share your gratitude with me in form of a little tip, you can do this completely subscription free on a platform called Buy Me a Coffee. My link there is buymeacoffee.com/justaride. And you can basically, in a very simple manner, tip me in form of a symbolic coffee, and I will make sure I enjoy that coffee. Those little tips, by the way, have helped me tremendously over this last winter. I did not have this platform in place last year. Now that I do, it makes life a whole lot easier. So thank you very much for everyone who has tipped me there in the past, and thanks in advance for the people who are going to. Hope this particular video helps you to wrap up your winter and keep your boards nice and safe and well maintained over summer. All right, let's keep cracking on with this content. In this particular case here, I got a little mackerel. This is actually part of my Stranda demo fleet, and that needs a little bit of love along the edges. Hasn't been ridden in a bit, and it has set on some rust here on the edge. So basically, I'm going to remove the rust. It doesn't really need a tune, but once you start messing around with a scrubby pad, with a Scotch-Brite pad on the edge, you may as well just give it at least a bit of a diamond stone touch-up. Removing rust can be done in different ways. You can do this either with a gumstone, like these guys here, or you can do it with a scrubby pad. I'm sure there are different ways to do this. A diamond stone works, but it's not, in my opinion, not the best idea, because a diamond stone will also sharpen the edge or alter the base bevel or side edge bevel. So let's take a look here whether we can remove this bit of rust with a scrubby pad. So here you can see the rust. I'm going to try gumstone first. See what happens. Now it's getting a little bit better. The scrubby is more abrasive, that's for sure. Almost gone, tiny little bit. So that's how you deal with your rust. Then, of course, if you have any kinds of rock burrs, you will remove those with either like an aluminum oxide stone or with a coarse diamond. I have 120 grit diamond. That's really, really good to remove rock burrs. Or 200 grit is fine as well. Depends a bit on the severity of your edge damage. Basically, of course, you do that before you tune edges. I'm not going to go into an edge tune here because I have a 1-hour tutorial on tuning edges going to pop up right here. You can watch that and literally follow all those steps, because really what you want to do before you put your board away is a full edge tune, so that board is ready to be ridden once the wax has been scraped off in the fall. In this case, the board really doesn't need much at all. What I'm going to do here is simply run a diamond along the side edge, re-sharpen a little bit, polish a little bit, and then I'm basically ready for the next step. So once your edges are ready, what we want to do is look at cleaning the base if it's necessary. There's multiple ways to clean a base. One thing many people do is base cleaner, citrus base cleaner. I'm using this KUU stuff here, that's pretty nice. If I use it at all, what I mostly do, so every time I wax a board, I actually clean the base beforehand with a scrubby pad. Some people do this with a steel brush or like a copper brush or something like that, a bronze brush. I personally prefer using a scrubby pad. It kind of, I don't know, it's like micro abrasive, right? So it kind of opens the base a little bit, and it's supposed to make for better wax absorption. I'm not 100% sure on the science on this. However, I use a scrubby pad and it cleans my base pretty well. And because I wax quite often, my bases are actually never really dirty of any kind. So for me, this will be enough. The issue with base cleaners, as much as it's not a huge issue, is that they do dry a base out. So if you have a base with a print, you will see after the application of base cleaner that the colors get all milky and gray. And that's not a huge deal, don't worry about it. But it does happen, and if my base doesn't actually need this stuff, I'm not doing it. Some people are saying definitely do it all the time. I've heard this from pro tuners who are doing that all the time. I personally don't really believe that it's necessary and may do more harm than good. So I'm not ever doing that unless my base is actually dirty. Why is your base dirty? Spring snow quite often on the mountain when things are melting. Dirt gets exposed in areas, that dirt spreads around. Your snow is a little bit brown, gray, whatever. And that dirt is being attracted by your base. And that you want to remove just for good measure. And basically, yeah, of course, dirt is going to make you slow. So we want to get rid of that. I'm going to do scrubby pad here, and basically all you want to do is go tip to tail, nice and even until you got the whole base. You can see here what that removes. This pad was clean and new. So basically this is like, you know, leftover wax combined with whatever dirt is in there. And as you see, that is removed pretty easily and nicely with this pad without the need for any kind of base cleaner. I think the pad is it's probably medium coarseness. You definitely feel that it has a bit of a bite to it, and that's also what you want. So now just wipe off any kind of debris, and technically you're ready to wax. Of course, what you would also want to do, I've actually never touched on this topic, that's going to happen next season. If there's any base damage at this point, you may as well do a quick P-Tex job and then your board is properly ready. But what I've done here now, I've done my edges, they're nice and sharp, there's no more rust anywhere, and I have basically cleaned my base, and now I'm ready for the application of wax. And then there's only going to be one other step once we've put the wax on there, and we're going to get there in a second. Let's wax it up. So I'm not going to go into full waxing clinic mode. There's a full video, 40 minutes I believe, on just waxing on my channel. I'm not going to go into the details, and also I'm keeping this pretty quick here because I got a lot of boards to do. So I'm just going to drip on some all temp wax, spread it out, give it a few even passes from tip to tail, and then I won't scrape it. I'm just going to leave it on. So You could technically just leave the wax randomly distributed on the board. However, you're doing yourself a favor by doing some tip to tail passes, like slow passes with the iron, simply to create a nice, even, smooth surface that will help you with scraping. You need to consider that the wax will dry out more and like kind of harden out a little bit over summer when the board's being stored, and scraping it off is a little bit more difficult than in the normal waxing procedure where you're scraping off, 20 minutes or half hour after wax application. So doing what I'm doing here, tip to tail passes, gets a bit more wax into your base and also just leaves a surface on the board that is much easier to work with in the fall. So the wax is on, nice and even. Very last thing you want to do, take a wax scraper. Mostly they come with this little cutout here with this little corner, and that is to get the wax off your edges. And now this is a little bit counterintuitive. You would normally think, well, leaving the wax on the edge will protect the edge, but actually what can happen, and I've seen it happen, depending on how long your board has been sitting after the last ride, the metal edges can actually still, in some miraculous way, shape or form, carry some water, like they're seemingly porous or whatever it is, and you can develop rust under the wax because there's some form of moisture content somewhere. It might actually, personally I think it might not actually be in the metal, but maybe between the base and the metal, I don't know, but I've seen it, and yeah, it's a good thing to simply get the wax off the edge and then store your board in an environment that isn't very humid, so you actually don't get any rust on your edges from whatever is happening in your room. So yeah, that's about it. Again, clean up your edges, give them a sharpen, clean your base in one way or another, and then all temp wax. And when I scrape this guy in the fall, it's instantly completely ready to go, and I save myself the full tune then, plus the board is protected over summer. I think that's a win-win. Hope you enjoyed this and you have the opportunity for yourself at home to actually do this. It's a really good thing to get into tuning and basically just maintaining your gear and prolonging its life. To me, it's all about riding my boards for as long as I can, and of course, therefore, I have to do a bit of maintenance here and there. Not a big deal, and actually overall quite fun. Also for me, like after a big winter, this is a bit of a zone to say, to welcome summer and to basically say goodbye to all the boards before I tuck them away. All right. Take care, everyone. Wish you all the best. Hopefully I'll see you here next winter. I'm pretty certain that I will be putting out a little bit of content still over the next few weeks. And then maybe over summer, I'm not 100% sure yet, but it's surely going to be less than over the winter. Stay tuned, like and subscribe, get the notifications so you will actually see what I'm going to be up to here maybe over the next few months. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.